It's funny how life can change in a single weekend. 10 years of marriage, a beautiful home in the suburbs, and 2 kids. Everything I thought was perfect shattered like a mirror dropping on concrete. My wife and I met during our final year of high school. I was on the basketball team, spent most of my time in the gym, while she was always organizing events for the student council. We weren't supposed to end up together if you followed the usual high school social rules, but somehow we clicked. Maybe it was because we both loved the same obscure indie bands, or maybe it was just fate. We dated through college, got married right after graduation, and settled back in our hometown. The corporate world welcomed us both. She landed a position at a big marketing firm, and I went into sales. We bought our first house when most of our friends were still sharing apartments. By our late 20s, we had our daughter, and our son came along 2 years later. There was just one constant source of tension in our relationship, her friend from high school who also happened to work at her company. Let's just say, he never quite understood the meaning of boundaries. They shared countless inside jokes, had lengthy phone conversations, and exchanged messages throughout the day. Every time I brought up how uncomfortable it made me feel, she would dismiss my concerns, saying I was being paranoid and that they were just friends. Last summer, I noticed things started to change. Their constant communication seemed to decrease, and he stopped showing up at our weekend barbecues. I actually felt relieved, thinking maybe she had finally recognized how inappropriate their friendship had become. Then came that fateful October weekend. My wife told me she was going on a girls' retreat with her coworkers, something about a spa weekend with facials and wine tasting. I stayed home with the kids, ordered pizza, and we had a movie marathon. Everything seemed normal until Saturday night. I was scrolling through Netflix, trying to find something to watch after putting the kids to bed, when my phone lit up. It was him calling, something that had never happened before. I answered out of pure confusion, but he didn't say anything. That's when I heard them talking in the background. They didn't know I was on the line. What I heard in those few minutes changed everything. There was never any girls' retreat. The spa weekend was actually a lake house getaway with him. I listened as my wife talked about regretting their previous encounter and how last night shouldn't have happened. My stomach turned as I realized the full scope of what was going on. But that wasn't even the worst part. What came next revealed just how calculated this whole situation was. About an hour after that phone call, my phone started buzzing with messages from him. It wasn't just text. He sent screenshots of their conversations going back months, photos of them together, and even a video from the lake house where they were staying. The video wasn't anything explicit, but seeing them together, laughing and holding hands on the deck, was more than enough to make me feel sick. I realized then that the phone call wasn't an accident. He had planned it, wanting me to hear everything. This was his way of winning some sort of competition that only existed in his head. After all these years of me saying something wasn't right about their friendship, he was finally showing me I had been right all along. When my wife came home Sunday evening, she could barely look at me. She went straight to our room, claiming she was tired from all the spa treatments. I acted like everything was normal. We had breakfast together Monday morning, dropped the kids at school, and went about our usual routine. She had no idea that I knew everything or that her friend had sent me proof of their affair. I spent the next few days planning my next move. Getting them fired seemed like an obvious first step. The company had strict rules about workplace relationships. But that didn't feel like enough. They had destroyed our family, broken our children's home apart, and they needed to face real consequences. By Wednesday, I had scheduled a meeting with her boss. What made everything even better was that one of the photos her friend had sent me showed them getting cozy in the office break room, the same room where we had all gathered for holiday parties and company celebrations. Her boss's face turned pale when I showed her the evidence. I could tell she was thinking about all the times she'd had coffee at that same table. I knew my wife well enough to know she had no idea her friend had sent me anything. For all his planning, he didn't think about how this would affect any chance of them being together after our inevitable divorce. She would never forgive him for exposing their affair this way. As I left the boss's office, I watched her storm over to his desk. He looked confused as she practically dragged him into her office. That's when I made my way to my wife's desk. Their office had this modern open layout, no cubicles, just rows of desks where everyone could see everything. It was perfect for what I was about to do. I placed a large envelope on her desk. Inside were all the screenshots and photos her friend had sent me, along with divorce papers I had my lawyer prepare. Standing there in front of all her coworkers, I told her I wanted a divorce. Then, making sure my voice was loud enough for nearby desks to hear, I mentioned how I knew all about her affair with her best friend. The office went silent. Her coworkers suddenly became very interested in their computer screens, but I could see them stealing glances. My wife's face turned bright red as she realized what was happening. Not only was she about to lose her marriage, but her professional reputation was crumbling right in front of her eyes. After leaving her office, I picked up the kids from school and drove straight to my sister's house. She didn't ask questions when she saw my face, just helped me bring in the kids' backpacks and started making hot chocolate for them. We ended up staying with her for almost a month while I looked for a new place. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. Both my wife and her friend were fired that same day. The company didn't want any part of the scandal, especially after finding out what happened in their break room. From what I heard through mutual friends, she completely cut off contact with him after discovering he had sent me all those messages and pictures. Her plan had been to end things that weekend at the lake house, but his need to prove something to me destroyed any chance of them staying friends. She moved back to her parents' house in the next town over. I kept our house in the divorce settlement but ended up selling it. Too many memories in those walls, and I couldn't imagine raising my kids there anymore. Found a nice 3-bedroom apartment closer to their school instead. The hardest part wasn't the divorce itself. That was actually pretty straightforward since she didn't contest anything. What really got complicated was figuring out the custody arrangement. We both agreed on joint custody, but trying to work out who gets the kids for which holidays has been like solving a puzzle where half the pieces are missing. These days, life has found a new normal. The kids spend weekdays with me and weekends with their mom. They're doing better than I expected. Kids are surprisingly tough when they need to be. My daughter still asks sometimes why we can't all live together again, but those questions are getting less frequent. As for my ex-wife, she found a new job at a smaller company across town. Sometimes when I see her at school events or kid drop-offs, I catch her looking at me with regret in her eyes. But there's no going back. Trust is like a piece of paper. Once it's crumpled, you can try to smooth it out, but it'll never be the same again. Her friend ended up moving to another state. I heard he tried reaching out to her several times, but she blocked him on everything. Turns out his little power play backfired completely. He lost his job, his best friend, and any chance of them ever being together. Looking back now, almost a year later, I realized that finding out about their affair was actually a blessing in disguise. Yes, it hurt like hell at the time, and yes, our family will never be the same. But living with someone who could lie to my face for months, who could betray our family like that would have been much worse than being alone. These days, I focus on what matters, being there for my kids, building our new life, and slowly learning to trust again. It's not the life I planned for, but maybe that's okay. Sometimes the best chapters of our story come after what we thought was the ending. Just last week, my daughter asked me if I was still sad about what happened. I told her the truth, that sometimes sad things happen, but they can lead us to better places. We just have to be brave enough to keep moving forward. She seemed to understand, in that simple way kids often do. And maybe that's all any of us can do. Keep moving forward, one day at a time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.